Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. Lovely to have you back with us again. Been a week since we last spoke. I hope you and yours are all well. Well, there's lots been happening this week, and we've got lots to discuss, and as usual, time will be against us. The clock always beats us. We never seem to have enough time. But a slightly different format this week. I am delighted to say that I am joined, I'm going to be joined later in the show with three of the Alba lady candidates for the upcoming elections in May. But firstly, to discuss this week and what's been going on in other matters, I am joined by, of course, the Coatbridge Cavalier, who at the moment is I got a double D here, the Daily Dunce today. It'll be Dunce, very charming. Phil there, the Coatbridge Cavaliers in India, and the belle from the borders, the wonderful Yvonne Ridley. Yvonne, Phil, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, good one.
Yes, fine until I heard what you just called me.
Well, the borders belle. I couldn't. We've got the we've got the Coatbridge Cavalier, we've got the Paisley Mohawk. You've got to have a nickname. You've got to have a nickname.
Okay.
And I couldn't think of any but Newcastle football team. Yeah, you got to have a moniker when you're on here. It's part of your badge. We don't pay your fees, but we give you a nickname. So there we go. How's your week? You had a good week, but it's been a hell of a week politically. I don't know where to begin, really. Yvonne, I think we've got to start with what I think was the story of the week, or the faux pas of the week. I don't know what you call it. It was the First Minister suggesting that in Ukraine, because the war goes on, and I should make a statement right at the beginning, because some people misunderstand. Because I don't accept the BBC ITV Western view of the whole war doesn't mean I support Vladimir Putin or the aggression or the invasion. I don't. I'm opposed to all war. I'm anti-war, but I'm more annoyed at the hypocrisy. But I know what my limits are. I wish the First Minister did, because this week, Yvonne, you've been an anti-war campaigner your whole life as well. But this week, I don't know, Nicola Sturgeon, if she just didn't think, wasn't briefed, or I really don't, I can't find any excuse for suggesting that a no-fly zone should not be taken off the table. That would create escalation. And with Faslane just down the road from Glasgow, I mean, it's insanity, Yvonne. Or have I missed something?
No, you're quite right. It wasn't a rational thing to say. Militarily, I think quite a few people slapped their foreheads. It was an incredibly naive thing for her to say. And, you know, Scotland had an opportunity to cut its own swathe in this war, a war which no sane person would want anyway. And unfortunately, she seems to have fallen in line with Westminster, and whatever Boris Johnson is saying, she's there at the table echoing him. And it's not a dignified position for any Scottish politician to be in, to be seen as a lapdog to the British Prime Minister, and of all Prime Ministers, you know, Boris Johnson. And we have a situation now where perhaps the only thing nuclear weapons are deterring is the ability to properly and directly help Ukraine. And talking about introducing the no-fly zone is just not a good idea at all. It's incredibly naive. My personal experience of being in a no-fly zone was in Iraq before the war, and I was on a passenger plane getting a flight from Baghdad to Basra, and we were intercepted by 2 RAF fighter jets that were pointing out to the pilot, you've entered the no-fly zone. And, that was quite an unnerving position to be in, since we were on a civilian airliner. But it sounds catchy to say no-fly zone, and sounds, but it is just not a sensible thing to talk about. In fact, it was utterly responsible. Maybe because she did initially, anyway, so well on COVID at the start of the outbreak. Maybe she thought that she should be back at the big table with those who inhabit the Westminster bubble. I think that she missed a great opportunity. She could have still shown her solidarity and support with the people of Ukraine, but she could have also moved onto the high moral ground and tried to dial down the rhetoric instead of putting on her Tommy helmet and joining Boris Johnson in his bunker.
Yeah, it's Alex Salmond has always showed the way. Phil, he turned around and said, for 60 years, the Scottish independence movement has taken a neutral position and has opposed all wars and said, we want to negotiate the conflict to stop, the fighting to stop, a negotiated conflict, but we don't take sides. We are neutral. The same as the Irish position, which I think is fantastic. I saw a couple of Irish MEPs giving it big licks about neutrality. But Alec was right. Nicola was totally, and even as someone who purports to have been in the CND before she was in the SNP, she was talking up nuclear weapons as well, saying, well, they had, made Russia think again.
You see,
I joined the SNP 30 years ago this year, but I joined Scottish CND the year before that. And I have opposed nuclear weapons ever since. And this year, perhaps, the decision will come about whether or not the UK should renew the Trident nuclear system. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the biggest and most important decisions that the UK Parliament will take in this term. And before those who support the renewal of Trident line up to tell us that it would be absurd, that it would be dangerous, that it would be out of step not to renew Trident, let us remind them of this. The vast, overwhelming majority of countries the world over do not have nuclear weapons. It is the norm, it is the rule in the world today to be nuclear free. It is the exception to the rule to possess nuclear weapons. Let that message ring out loudly and clearly.
You see, I've always said that an independent Scotland could be a real force for good on the international stage. You've got a tiny little state like Qatar, which is punching well above its weight, and brought together America and the Taliban and peace in Afghanistan. And I think that that's the sort of role that Scotland could play. But for her to intervene or jump in this way to get a few cheap headlines, I just thought was really quite sad.
Yep, it's her way. It's her way. So Alec got it right, did he not, Phil?
Yeah, I would say so, because the no-fly zone is just one big bang on the war drum. What it equates to is a zone that your planes go in and take control of, and anything in there gets shot down. You know, and often it's fire first and ask questions later. So you're seriously promoting putting our warplanes in and our people to take down Russian fighters and Russians who happen to be one of the biggest nuclear powers on the planet. Are you out of your mind? I mean, really? That is one cunning plan that I'm not impressed with. The other thing, though, is none of these issues are devolved. You know, focus on the day job, guys. The MPs, the MSPs, and the First Minister herself. What the Irish are talking about, what I've loved seeing is the anti-war rhetoric, the open criticism of what's happening in Palestine by Irish elected members of Parliament who reflect the will and the wishes of the people of Ireland.
I am truly horrified as a woman, a mother and a female TD at the casual acceptance of war. I don't want to waste my time in giving my opinion of Putin. I'm on the record, an absolute dictator, no respect for democracy. But NATO's role in all of this has already been outlined by some colleagues on the left, certainly not on the right. NATO has played a despicable role in moving forward to the border and engaging in warmongering. And indeed, Ireland has been hypocritical on many levels. But let me take the positive thing first. Let me take Simon Coveney's call for us to focus on dialogue and diploma. I hope to God he does that, and I will fully support him. Because I do not want war. And the casualness of the way history is being retold here is totally inaccurate. War doesn't solve anything. Perhaps women might begin to say that out loud, not in our name. Peace in our name, because we suffer the most and children suffer the most. And when we look at our outrage over the Russian army in our waters, and rightly so that outrage, it wasn't matched by outrage over NATO exercises in our waters. We turned a blind eye to that. We turned a blind eye to the blatant breach of international law by Israel against Palestine. And we turn a blind eye against the Yemen and Saudi Arabia's role there and our collusion with that role. So I take no lectures from any male TD in this chamber in relation to standing up and seeing the reality. I know the reality. I have read and read everything I can get and looked at every possible document in relation to war, and it solves nothing. I stand firmly with the Ukraine. I can't, it's unimaginable what you're facing. And even more unimaginable is a third world war for NATO. We now look forward to a compass, I'll finish on that, a critical compass, when we have lost our moral compass.
We feel the same way in Scotland. Why are our MPs, MSPs and First Minister not reflecting the will of the people of Scotland? Why are they kowtowing to the centrist London government? Not happy with this.
No, I've got to say, I've got to pay a big compliment today as well, Yvonne. You've got, as far as I'm concerned, the tweet of the week. Where you showed the picture of the Daily Record where the grandpa was going out to fight the pesky Russians.
And fighting has intensified in the southeast.
And he was going to go out there and fight them. And you'd put it, if this, and they were talking about what a hero grandpa was and all this. But as you quite rightly pointed out, if he'd been going to Palestine or Syria or Libya or the Yemen to fight for those non-white people, those non-Christian people,
he wouldn't have got out of duty free.
He wouldn't have been arrested. He'd been in the bar helping now, or down in London in that terrorist joint. And we're talking about what an evil man he was. They'd be digging his bins up. And it was hypocrisy, and I applaud you for it. It was brilliant. But that's the mainstream media, Yvonne, encouraging people to go there and fight. And of course, we've also heard about the soldier from England that went. It lasted one day and come back. Well, you know, the Russians have got gunships and rockets, and he legged it back into Poland, jumped in a plane, and went home.
Well, there is a more serious side to this, of course, and that is that about 300 men have gone out to fight in the Ukraine, and there seems a higher number than usual of British soldiers that have gone AWOL. And the reality is that these idiots are in danger of dragging the UK into a war, because if they're captured by the Russians, and it will quickly transpire that they are serving UK soldiers, that means there are NATO forces on the ground in Ukraine. And it doesn't matter how much Liz Truss would try and explain that.
Oh, God help us.
You know, I mean, this is a woman who could start a fight in an empty room. Putin would immediately declare war on Britain.
Yeah, it is quite frightening though, Phil. And the other thing was that for this biolab, suddenly the Russians grabbed a couple of biolabs, which the Americans denied, and the BBC, even up until last night, was saying fake news, it's lies, don't believe them, bad Russians, Putin's the new Hitler, he's mad. And it turns out they admitted it.
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which in fact we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces.
The Americans had biolabs in Ukraine making chemical warfare ingredients. Now, that's still, I go back to, I don't agree with any war. That's not justification for Russia to invade, but I say this, if the Russians had biochem labs in Canada or Mexico or Cuba, what would the American reaction be?
Absolutely, and it's understandable, and this is the difference between realpolitik and the ideological philosophy, that we're all anti-war, but the reality is in this planet there will be war, unfortunately. We want to minimize it as much as we can. And there are situations when I would go to war if my home country or my family were threatened. But I'd have to be genuine. But when you line all this up, I mean, not just this ex-UK British Army guy who went out there and basically faced a full Russian onslaught and then ran away with his tail between his legs. The mainstream media are encouraging this. Mm-hmm. And the government's not doing anything about it. They should be sanctioned. They should be absolutely... They should be destroyed for this. This is horrific to encourage people to do this. And then you add to that the biolabs on the border that the Americans have freely admitted, and I've been talking about, then the murder of 13,500 to 14,000, exact numbers disputed, of Russian speakers and Russian nationals in the eastern part of the Donbass area. Then the NATO expansionism from the 2008 Bucharest summit onto the 1999, the 2004 incursions into about a dozen or so countries of ex-Warsaw Pact, and then the claim in 2014, as well as the insurrection and the forced coup that the Americans played part of replacing a pro-Russian president with a pro-American president. And people are saying it's all Putin's fault. I'm sorry, but that doesn't equate to all Putin's fault, no matter what anybody says.
Okay. The other thing, Yvonne, while the Americans have admitted that these biolabs are there, they're now trying to say, well, they're just making aspirins or something. You know what I mean? It's nothing untoward. But if there is a chemical attack, it will be the Russians that do it. I mean, they really know that the media is not going to tell the truth, and they just keep lying and keep feeding the sheepy with anything that they like.
Well, the media role in this has been woefully inadequate on both sides. Russia Today, clue in the title, is obviously going to be pumping out pro-Russian stories, just in the same way that the BBC is pumping out pro-UK government stories as well. And a classic example of the fog of war for journalists was the shelling of the nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And the Russians said this was an inside job, and it was the Ukrainians trying to bring in NATO forces because the threat of a nuclear disaster would shake everyone to the core, which it would. I mean, we know that in Scotland because of the effects of the Chernobyl disaster. And of course, this power plant is 10 times the size of Chernobyl. So what the Russians were saying actually made sense. But then the Ukrainians said, no, we didn't target the power plant. The Russians did, and the Russians shelled it. And after the initial scares, we discovered that none of the reactors were targeted, but it was a building in the complex of the nuclear power plant. Now, both sides could be telling the truth, or both sides could be telling lies. And the reality is, we've got propaganda from the West, which is just as strong as the propaganda coming out of Russia. So we're in a terrible dilemma of trying to work out who is doing what. With nuclear weapons, with chemical weapons, Russia does have form in Syria. However, chemical weapons were used in Gaza, and yet the West didn't really make much of a fuss about that. You know, there's this double standards that is going on.
Yeah.
And of course, there are dirty tricks on both sides. And because both sides have lied through the media, it's very difficult to know who you can trust and who you couldn't believe. And if there are chemical weapons that are being used, it's going to be extremely difficult to know which direction they're coming from, because many of us still remember the lies about WMD in Iraq.
Yeah, and
So
also
our people have got form. When I say our, I mean the West.
Yeah.
You know, I don't stand with NATO. I don't stand with Putin. I don't stand with anybody other than Ukrainian people and those brave souls in Russia who are marching in defiance of the Kremlin and saying no to war.
Yep. As I said out at the beginning, people tell us because we are questioning it, and Prism will always question, and we question both sides, and we condemn both sides for this. But the other one, the one I tell you, Ian Lawson's dog will not be happy that there's another dog trying to weasel in its role. BBC, there was a BBC guy on, I can't remember his name, Phil, who turned around and was very seriously and giving it, very home counties as well. The Russian people are only getting to hear the news that their newscasters want to give them. And I thought, is there an irony alert coming up next? I mean, they really they just take the piss every time.
Yeah, you look at the evolution of propaganda, and it's like going backwards. It's becoming more simplistic. This is supposed to be staying. Was it P.T. Barnum? You can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. It's something like that. But the bottom line is, what we're seeing now here is a situation where I've tried, as something Yvonne mentioned last week, I think, where you try to see both sides. And I don't want anyone telling me what to think. I want to be objective. I want to gather what information I can, make my own mind up about it. So I tried to check RP. I tried to check Sputnik. I've tried to check TASS, and I can't get access to them. So I can't find out what the other side are saying here. So how can we know what's going on? And yet we're getting all these old tricks played against us.
Yep. It's just finishing up on this because it's again, Yvonne's touched on it. In Palestine, I found some information today. In Palestine, in this year alone, 266 civilians, including 66 children, have been killed, murdered. But the Western media are not telling you that. People are not putting Palestinian flags up. They're not talking about sanctions against Israel. And that's the bit that really is annoying me. I feel for the Ukrainians. I would take a Ukrainian, a person in, no bother. Particularly if they bring some vodka, you're in. But I sympathise with them. I sympathise with the Palestinians. I sympathise with the Syrians and the Yemenis. And what we need is just equal reporting, guys. And those of you, I would just say to the viewers who are watching this, you don't believe the BBC when they show you the weather map. Don't believe what they're telling you on this. As Phil's saying to you, as Yvonne's saying to you, do your own research, look at both sides, because I tell you what, both sides are lying. There are no good guys in this except the poor civilians, the unarmed civilians who are caught in the middle. But enough on that, because I could use up the whole show in this. There's been other things happening, Yvonne. And one of them was, again, I've got to go back to our First Minister, who told us that on International Women's Day as well, of all days, that GRA reform was at the heart of COVID recovery. Now, as a woman and a feminist yourself, that must have given you great comfort to know that that was the main reason that was requiring to recover from COVID.
I don't know. I've been at this, I was talking to somebody today about Nicola Sturgeon, because I was a big fan of hers. I thought, I just thought she was a brilliant First Minister, representative of the Scottish people, and then somewhere it just went all wrong. And I was trying to work out, politicians are all about legacy. And, you mentioned Tony Benn's name and people automatically think peacemaker, a man who would stand up to authority. Yeah. And I was trying to think, what will Nicola Sturgeon's legacy be? And at the moment, the only thing that I can say is this GRA bill, which represents a tiny minority within a minority. Mm-hmm. This bill isn't as seismic as gay marriages or equality for gay people.
Making homosexuality legal and not illegal.
Yes, it's not as big or as seismic as that, and and I just think, what is going to be her legacy? Is it really going to be the erosion of women's rights? And, in the south of Scotland where I am, if I mention the GRA bill, I could guarantee only 1 out of 10 may be aware of it. Yeah. And it's not something. So what is her legacy? Is it bringing us up to the point of a referendum and then dropping us back down again? Is it she's just a political tease? And so, if she's at that age now, and I'm speaking from knowledge here, she's at that age now where she will be thinking, what is my legacy? What will people remember me for? And she's gone from hero to zero.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what her legacy is going to be.
Well, this is time I'm going to give myself a wee plug here. I wrote one of my blogs this week, and it was called "She Loves a Bandwagon," because Yvonne's touched on it, Phil. She does. Because if you remember when she came in, the first thing she did was she didn't consolidate all the great stuff that Alec had done. And let's be honest, Alec did fantastic stuff, and we'll not need to go through that. From ending bridge tolls and student fees and prescription charge, all done in his government, radical. She wanted a gender balanced cabinet, and she did it. She wanted to be the first for that. And of all the parties in the UK, just take the UK, the SNP was the last one that needed that done. Because, this is the party of Wendy Wood and Margaret MacDonald and Winnie Ewing and Philippa Whitford and Joanna Cherry and, let's say it, Nicola Sturgeon herself. Mm-hmm. All these people, they didn't need to do positive discrimination. And then when that sort of faded, then me too, I'm on that bandwagon. Let's go. And and I tell you, even better for me, if I assassinate my previous mentor, I'll get lots of kudos. Okay, how about this People's March? I'll go for that. And my legacy will be, I'd stop Brexit in England. And that's not got COVID. Oh yeah, I'll be seen as the COVID queen. She jumps from one bandwagon to the next band. Now the latest one is let's use, let's start World War III, and with Boris on this one too. And I missed the other one, which was, let's stop, let's give away Scotland's natural resources, stop bringing oil out the North Sea, and we'll have a four nations approach and close down the Campbell field. That's what she does. She jumps on bandwagons, Phil. I've finished my rant. I've finished.
Well, the sad thing about a lot of what you say is it's accurate in so much as a lot of this stuff actually works against the best interests of Scotland. Mm-hmm. And, for me, positive discrimination is a complete contradiction in terms, because I am against what people call, I'm against all discrimination. You can call it positive, but it's not. I saw this in BP. We were trying desperately to get more female engineers in. Now, I'm a QS. When I was studying a long time ago, it was less than 10% of QSs were female. And in spite of all the efforts, women are not interested in being QSs or bricklayers or doing this type of work. And we've got to admit, and this is where the biology comes in. I think O-level biology should be mandatory. And it would be a bit of psychology in there. Men and women are different. If we understood about O-level biology, you would know that the XX and XY chromosome, which defines your sex, is in every single cell of your body and is determined early on in birth as cells start splitting. It's crazy, some of the stuff that we have been dragged down. Instead of focusing on the prime directive for the SNP, which has always been independence, nothing less. Independence, nothing less. It's Scotland's oil.
Yeah.
There's no surprise. You move away from those traditional values, you're on a rocky road.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, just the last thing on it. Ian Blackford came out today this week and said that Ukraine war might delay the independence referendum from 2023. How you join that over, I don't know, Yvonne. It really is quite bizarre. But there's other rumours going round Westminster, apparently, that Ian Blackford is going to stand down, they say, before the May elections, and Alan Smith and Stuart MacDonald are circling to become exactly. Phil's just put his hands over his face. Are circling to take over. That's a worry. I don't think Ian Blackford's exactly Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi, but my God, Stuart MacDonald or Alan Smith's quite frightening. Certainly not good for independence.
Well, the rumour that from the Westminster bubble, which distressed me this week, was hearing that one of the SNP MPs fancies himself as a deputy speaker, which means, that they've got very comfortable in the Westminster bubble, have lost their direction totally, and
do you have a name? Let me guess. Do you have a name?
Well, I won't say anything just yet.
Is it my friend? Is it my pal? My hero?
It might not be true, but he's blocked me anyway on Twitter.
Oh, it is him. It doesn't surprise me.
But it even the thought of a member of the SNP Westminster MPs, just wanting to become part of the establishment, it's madness. And at the inaugural Alba Party conference, Alex Salmond did say it's like being marched up the hill. You get halfway up and then you march back down again, and then you get halfway up and you march back down again. And voters in Scotland aren't stupid. They know when they've been taken for granted. Yeah. And I just wonder how many times will the SNP play the independence card, because it's like the little boy who cried wolf. It isn't going to work.
No, but
where do we go from there?
Well, I was going to say, it's like the Labour Party did before, Phil, where they used closing the House of Lords and free beer for the workers and equality will come. Just one more mandate for the Labour Party. We'll get rid of these dirty Tories and everything will be beautiful in Scotland and the northeast of England and all the other deprived areas of the UK, but just vote Labour. It's the same, just a different, it's just the Labour Party with a kilt on.
Yeah, it's so sad. I mean, everything, it's already been said. I mean, there's nothing more to be said about this. You think betrayal is a word I used quite some time ago, and it's now here. It's arrived. The principles of the SNP are being betrayed by those who should know better. The whole settle up, not settle down mantra has been dropped. We're now being woven into the whole scheme of unionism, and to be part of that instead of, I mean, I got to the point when we went down there in 2016 and 56. It was clear that from a management perspective, I manage big teams of people and projects, and it was clear there was 6 people there who were loan operators who had no idea how to manage these people or delegate. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't talent there. There was some good talent. I mean, Angus Robertson's a talented guy. There's a lot of them are really, really smart and switched on. Ian Blackford, for example, is an impressive guy. He worked for Deutsche Bank. He ran a hedge fund. He's a sharp operator. He's a clever guy. He had an issue with Alex a long time ago. But now, and I've had some private conversations with him about, was it Chris, a year and a bit ago. I bumped into him in London and we talked about some things. And I won't betray the trust of that conversation. No, but here we are without results, taking us closer to independence. And you've got to measure politicians and political parties on results, and I see failure.
I agree. We've run out of time. There's a lot more I want to discuss, but I'll keep that for the ladies. But the last thing I must have your input on, which is something I know is dear to your heart, and I'm sure as a good royalist, Yvonne, you'll be delighted to know that during these austere times, the government's still going to find £250 million to get the Windsors a new yacht. That must have brought you such joy in these times, Yvonne.
Well, why don't they just go and seize one of the oligarchs' yachts? One of these that have pumped so much money into the Tory party. But well, of course, these are hard times for the royals. They've just had to shell out millions of pounds to a woman who Prince Andrew says he's never met.
Correct. Generous to tea.
And
I've never met him. Come on.
And we've got Charles, who's embroiled in a cash for honours row, and all sorts of other things. And then, of course, the royal household is turning apparently on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And, they're the only 2 royals that I can think of that are actually funding themselves now. Having left, this pampered palatial existence that they all live in, this cosy Windsor bubble, at least, they're making or trying to make a living themselves, and they're being condemned for it. The sooner the monarchy goes, the better. People say, oh, the Queen hasn't put a foot wrong. Yes, she has. She's interfered at every turn. It's just never been reported. And the first major indication we got of how pernicious her presence can be was when David Cameron told us that she purred down the phone. When she heard that Scotland wasn't going to become independent.
Bottled it's the word you're looking for.
So I'm not shedding any tears for the Windsors, but as I say, if they're that desperate for a flaming yacht, go out and get one from their oligarch mates.
Right, and you, Phil, I take it you're every bit as enthusiastic about the monarchy getting a nice new shiny yacht.
Yeah, that's not on. That shouldn't happen. I can't remember. Last time I looked at these figures, it was like 330 something million. You know, these all
And it'll
these
go up
different
another bit.
hangers on, all the various hangers on, Lieutenant General's office or whatever it is of every sheriffdom, and the Queen interfering in independence also not acceptable. I mean, I'll be honest, it's not high on my priority of getting rid of the monarchy. It's not something I don't support, but I could live with it if we stop spending giving them money. It's maybe 153rd on my list of things to do in an independent Scotland.
No, that's way up higher on my list. Way up higher. Anyway, Yvonne, I know you've got to rush away. You have another appointment. It has always been a pleasure, not a chore. Same with yourself, Phil. Lovely seeing you all again. Thank you for your input, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Bye.
Ciao.
Well, a big thank you to Yvonne and Phil, as always. I hope you had as much enjoyment and information out of that as I did. And we'll look forward to seeing them soon. I'm now joined, well, certainly with two of the Alba ladies. One of the ladies is having a bit of technical difficulties. Eileen Spence down there in Girvan in Ayrshire, who's standing in the North Ward, the Girvan North Ward for the South Ayrshire Council. But I'm also joined by another South Ayrshire candidate, Denise Somerville, who's standing in the Ayr North Ward. Denise, good evening.
Hi, Roddy.
Nice to see you. And I'm also joined by Heather McLean from Dundee, who's standing in the North East Ward for the Dundee City Council. Ladies, hello and welcome to Prism. Great to have you here. I just thought it was great. It would be a great idea to have some of our lady councillors. This is the week of International Women's Day. It would be good and fortuitous to have you ladies on because, the election's getting close, and I firstly allow me to congratulate you for being selected. Denise, had you had ambitions to do this before, or was it a recent sort of, okay, I'm up for it?
I've been volunteering in my community now for the past 4 or 5 years, which has led me to this point. I did try and put my betting through for MSP a couple of years ago, but wasn't successful. So I've just filled my time with my education at the moment until this opportunity came forth, and I'm absolutely honoured to be standing as an Alba candidate in May.
Well, we're honoured. The Alba Party and every person in the country should be honoured for every candidate that stands in every independence party. So I'm delighted that you're here. And Heather, you were a Holyrood candidate back last May. So this is old rope to you.
Not quite. It's I think every time an election comes up, it's scary, whether you're actually participating in it or whether you're actually out canvassing on behalf of somebody else. It's always a kind of scary thing. You know,
it is. And have you got plenty of help up there in Dundee?
Yep. Well, you know, Denise.
The other Denise, yes.
Denise and I are out every week. We've been leafleting for weeks and weeks, and every Sunday without fail we're out. But now that we're sort of really into the election, almost into the election period, I'm fully intending to be out on a daily basis because there's a lot of doors to cover, you know. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's going to be lots of events as well that are going to be coming up, meetings and whatever. So it's really hotting up.
Good stuff.
And I think we've got a better run at it this time because, last time it was kind of like 6 weeks before and you're a candidate and you have to do this, you have to do that. And it was like totally, I was overwhelmed by it all. Yeah. I mean, it was a great experience, but I mean, I was totally overwhelmed. Right. I wasn't banking on being elected, but my priority was I wanted Alec elected because he was number one in the Northeast, and I was second on the list, and my efforts were really spent trying to get him elected rather than myself. And if I'd been elected, then that was a bonus. But it was never really in my mind that I was going to be elected. But there you go. I mean, it's history, and I think we were, I mean, I could be, I could say what I think, but I wouldn't be ladylike.
So, Denise, tell me, is there one specific thing that made you want to do this, or is there something you want to champion, be education, potholes, bins, whatever? Or is it just a generalisation?
It's poverty levels in Ayr North are nearly about 50% of child poverty in Ayr North alone in Ayr, where the other end of Ayr is a lot more affluent and doesn't experience half the problems that we've got. So I like the idea of Alba's 5-point poverty plan to implement into the local councils, which would help thousands and thousands of families, especially in times when the food prices are rising and fuel poverty is going through the roof. A lot of people in universal credits at the moment, that's some of the prices for the fuel poverty is going to be at least half of what they get on universal credits, and it's going to send the area into worse deprivation than it already is. And it has, one of the sub-areas in Ayr North is already the second most deprived area in the full of Scotland, Wallistown. So I want to try and make a difference here. And mental health, children's mental health, especially after the recent pandemic, is shot through the roof, and the services are really, really underfunded and squeezed really tight. And I feel the bearing is now getting left to the schools, who can't cope with it either. And I feel that there's more funding needs to be implemented into that, because they are the future of Scotland, and we need them.
It's Denise has touched on it there on the 5-point plan, Heather, and we've got the introduction of an annual £500 payment, which will help over 500,000 low-earning families in Scotland. This is affordable, and it's all been costed. It's important that we get this out there. There's too many, we can't do this and we can't do that. It's time for us to start being can-do.
Yeah, we need to stop making excuses. I mean, all these things are a choice. When you actually think of the money that's been spent fighting court cases, over legislation that really should never have been brought forward, and also money given to lobby groups who are really telling the government what they want anyway. You know what I mean? They're funded by the government, and I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. The money that's wasted and could be spent in better ways. We understand. I think everybody in Scotland totally understands that we get money from Westminster. We get our own money back, but
some of it.
Yeah, some of it, yes. But Holyrood's holding on to that when they should really be giving it out to councils. I think we need to move to a sort of model where the money reaches the people rather than sort of controlled by Holyrood. It needs to be devolved down, and they want a centralised model of government, and I think we should go the opposite way and put the money where the people are, and what the priorities are of the people, rather than priorities of a handful of MSPs. The priorities to me are all wrong. I beggars belief that the one thing, the top of the list, in Nicola's to-do list is getting GRA, the GRA bill. When there are, I know that there are kids coming to school without coats. I know that, and it's always been like that. It's been like that since I started teaching years and years ago. It's not getting any better. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's worse. It's a lot of ways it's worse, and we could do so much, because when I first started teaching, we didn't have a Holyrood. We depended on the largesse of Westminster, and I think it's got worse. We should be doing a lot more. We've actually got a government here who could be doing a lot, but they're choosing different priorities. Yeah. And it's not the priorities that really affect the majority of people in this country.
Yeah, it's Denise, that there's no doubt that since 2010, since the Tories took power, they've been cutting Scotland's pocket money. And so Holyrood, and with some degree of fairness, that they've had their money cut, so they've done it. But the thing that really makes it difficult for local councils, firstly, I don't think everyone in Scotland realises that the council tax only comes to about 10% of the council's budget. The other 90% comes from the central government. And a lot of that 90%, if you take that as 100%, I don't know the exact numbers, maybe one of you ladies will, but so much of it, more than 70 or 80% of it, is ring-fenced to say, well, here's your money, but you've got to spend this or that, the next thing, this, and this. So councils are left, in fairness to them, with very little room to manoeuvre, because the actual amount, the pot of money that they're getting, and so they take, while we in Scotland, in Holyrood, say, well, it's big bad Westminster, the time has come where actually the councils are right to say, well, you know what?
Stop.
Holyrood's not helping us much either.
Yeah, stop making excuses and,
exactly.
and put the money where it's needed.
Yeah,
and it's not needed, on little niche groups. It's needed. Our children are the future of this country. I mean, I've dedicated my life to improving the lives of kids through education, but that only helps so much. You know what I mean? Kids need, good food.
I'm going to come on to that. I've got that here. I've got that there.
We're wanting to extend free school meals to all primary and secondary schools.
Yeah.
But we want good quality food, not the cheap stuff. We want kids to be eating proper healthy food. I used to laugh as a teacher when we had a big drive on healthy eating, and we even had healthy eating assistants. I think they're done away with now, but we had these healthy eating assistants, and they would be telling kids, eat your 5 a day, 5 fruits and vegetables and all the rest of it. And that's great, because you tell children when they're young, with the idea in mind that they'll grow up to know what healthy eating is and all the rest of it. And then they would go home. You would let them taste these things, and you'd have taster sessions and all the rest of it. But then the parents couldn't afford to go and buy the food that we're telling them that they should be eating for a healthy, healthy growth. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
There doesn't seem to be any joined up thinking anywhere going on in with this government. It's all very well telling people what they should be eating, but then if they don't have the money to actually buy those things, then what's the point? They're saying that people are obese and all the rest of it. Well, it's the food that they're having to eat. If they were eating the healthy food, then they wouldn't be obese. But they can't afford to buy the healthy food.
And why is that?
Because they don't have a job, or they're in really low paid jobs. Some people are in 2 or 3 jobs. And if you're not getting a proper income, then how can you go out and buy these things? And then prices are going up all the time. And now that we've got Brexit, you can't even buy some of the stuff that you want to buy in the supermarket. I was in the supermarket earlier on tonight after work, and the shelves were absolutely empty in the fresh fruit, the fresh food cabinet. I was thinking, what's going on here? And what's going on is Brexit.
Correct.
But they don't want to, they want to blame everything apart from Brexit.
So tell me, Denise, you're very much into education, and so the doubling of the educational maintenance allowance to 30 quid for, it'll go some way, as Heather's been talking about, it'll help a bit, and it's not going to eradicate poverty. We have to think differently, but as I was saying, alluding to earlier, it's very difficult for councils because they don't actually have the manoeuvrability, do they?
No, they don't.
No.
I think party politics has been a lot to do with it over the years as well. Too much party politics. When it's local level, my belief is that you should be working together constructively for who you're representing. It doesn't matter who your political party background is. It shouldn't be internal fighting and voting things down because this party isn't a party your party. It's silly infighting and it doesn't get things moved along. I don't know how you change that within council, so I'm just hoping with the new councillors that's going to be up and coming that they've a bit more sense in their shoulders and leave the party politics at the door. Just ever so slightly. I'm not saying that the policies that we're putting forward shouldn't be put forward because they're absolutely fantastic, but working together to make things happen for the benefit of the people should be number one priority. Where the EMA is concerned, rising it to 60 quid a week would encourage more young adults to get into further education. Also, they spend more money in the economy than the older generation does. The older generation tend to save for things like mortgages and houses and cars, etc., whereas the younger generation just want to spend their money on what they want. So it would also boost the economy as well. The great idea for giving leisure and sports to every child, again, would help start to eradicate some of the mental health problems that we have and bringing children back up to their full potential, and hopefully taking some of that burden off us. Social services, CAMS, mental health crisis teams and stuff like that as well.
But I want to see, I go back to, there'll never be enough money. There's never enough money for the NHS. There's never enough money for there never will be, no matter how much money we ever get. However, I have a cunning plan, folks. And as I said some time ago, I'll be taking to Alba conference a new form of funding for local councils, annual ground rent, roof and floor tax. But more on that later. But we can't, in the present, we've got to live in the present, Heather, and we can't eradicate poverty. No. In the next couple of years. Your tenure as councillors will not eradicate poverty, so we can only alleviate. And one of the things we've got to do is to make a council tax freeze. Now, I know that's difficult for councils, but the Scottish Government's got to find the money to allow councils to freeze their council, because people are getting battered from all sides just now. You've alluded to it. There's people with 2 and 3 jobs. It's not, as the Daily Mail would have you believe, that it's lazy and good for nothings. People are working their socks off, doing multiple jobs, and they just can't get out the bit. So the councils do have to, and the Scottish Government's got to step up. We've all got to push against the wheel here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's you just think, where's it all going to end? I think in a lot of ways, I mean, something that shocked me, is a lot of the shops that are sitting empty in Dundee. I'm sure in all cities, there are a lot of shops empty, and I'm thinking, well, why are they empty? Because people can't afford the business rates for them. So, I mentioned to someone who's a councillor who's just moved over to Alba, Alan Ross. I said to him, why don't we reduce the business rates? And surely it makes more sense to have 10 shops at a tenth of the rate than have one shop at the full rate. And he said, well, it's not up to councils. He said it's the Scottish Government that set the business rates. So the Scottish Government could do something about that, and people complain about the loss of trade in the high street, and people going to Amazon who get big tax breaks and all that sort of thing, the death of the high street. But surely that's a contributory factor. And if the councils can't do anything about the business rates, why do the Scottish Government set them so high? Surely it would make sense to lower them.
Well, it goes down to finances, surely. Denise, if you could get one, the magic wand, you're living in a utopian South Ayrshire, and you can, it can't be poverty. We don't like to get rid of poverty and crime, but if there's one thing you could really get into to change, what would it be?
It would be people's perceptions of harm reduction centres for addiction. I've seen a lot of people have addiction problems over the years and very little support put in place. I'm not a big fan of the methadone programme that has been used to help heroin addicts, as I feel as if it keeps them in a box, and it also keeps them surrounded by the same people and not being able to move on with life. Harm reduction centres would stop needles from forming in closes round about myself. It would be a safe place for people to inject what they're injecting or taking what they're taking on the assumption that they're going to be coming off it rather than going on to other types of medication, which you can be on for 30 to 40 years. Some people I know that's been on methadone. That is not really something that I can do at council level, but I would like to be lobbying governments to take this approach further, so that people can get the help and stop criminalising addictive behaviour and start classing it maybe as a mental health or abuse problem, rather than punishing people and putting them into prison and not getting the help that they need. So that would be my big utopian world, my big utopian plan.
I second that one. I would say, Heather, there's this. I believe that. Moving on from local authority, but on staying with drugs, if I may, I believe that part of our plan towards independence should be us pushing at the reserve door. And drug, as we know, one of the reasons we can't have these mobile drug safety rooms is because Westminster says no, we don't like it. So Nicola's goes, okay, right, we'll not do it. But I believe that's the sort of thing we should be doing, just saying, well, to hell with you, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Because we know it works and it saves lives. Sorry, what you were saying, Denise? Yeah?
No, the funny thing there is that there's studies there to say that some place, I can't remember off the top of my head whereabouts they trialled it, but the Westminster government's already trialling things at festivals to try and make the testing of the drugs that people are taking at
for
festivals.
England.
Yeah, for England only. So why is England allowed to do it, but Scotland isn't allowed their model to stop drug deaths and harm reduction in Scotland? It's absolutely terrible that our hands are tied to the Westminster government in this.
Yep, because
especially when health's evolved.
Yep, in Portugal, they've legalised, they've got rid of, and drug deaths have dropped dramatically. When
that would be the model that I would look to.
Exactly.
To take on.
Stop treating it as a criminal matter and start treating it as a health issue.
Health matter, yeah.
And I think the more of us that are saying that, the better. Quite some time ago, I had Ronnie Cowan, the SNP MP for Inverclyde, when SNP people were still talking to me. Well, there's still a few do. And he's very much an advocate of legalising medicinal cannabis and making it available to everyone. I mean, here where I live in Catalonia, I use medicinal for my health issue, and I grow my own oil. I'm not a junkie. I'm not going on to heroin or anything else. Purely my cannabis oil and my gin, and I'm fine. But the fact is, it's a wee bottle that size is costing people £200, and it has amazing properties to help people with cancers, with which is lung disease. We should be making things easier, not criminalising everything, Heather.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I just think, why do people take drugs? Why are our young people taking drugs?
Poverty.
And a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And the sense, and it's because we don't really have control over it. To me, it all goes back to being independent and making our own decisions here in Scotland.
Yeah.
Because, kids will take drugs because their peer group are doing it, because they're hanging around on street corners, because they've got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I look at things and think, you know, things are getting worse instead of better. For all that everybody's got technology and mobile phones and all the rest of it, you know, when I was well, a long time ago, when I was sort of a teenager, we had community centres to go to. They had discos practically every weekend.
Youth clubs.
Yeah,
them with days.
You can't. You know, the youth. You know, these community centres are not even open in the evenings, a lot of them. So what have kids got to do? I mean, they're just hanging around on street corners.
I think if you do it, there's been studies made, and you know, it's in the most deprived areas that drug abuse is at the worst.
That's right.
You know, it doesn't take a genius to work out. So what do? Lift people out of poverty.
Exactly.
And you will get rid of the problem.
Hope for the future.
Correct.
You know, I think a lot of people get into that out of boredom, out of a sense of frustration. You know, and you know, I just feel, you know, that we could do so much more for our young folk. You know, if we were making our own decisions here in Scotland.
Right.
I mean, the thing that I like, one of the things I like about the 5-point plan is the access to sports facilities, free access to sports facilities for all children, you know, all children under 18. You know, that would give them something to participate in.
But it's hard to do that if you're on an empty belly.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's like, no wonder people feel hopeless, because it's like you know, cause and effect. It's like a vicious circle, the whole thing.
That's why we've got to get independence, and
of course.
We've got to do it. Got to do it soon. I mean, there's two things. We're running out of time, ladies. You know, the time just flies, and a couple of things I'd like to cover, because one of the things during the independence referendum was we had the guy that delivers as I say, the papers and the milk to the rigs up in Aberdeen, Ian Wood. Who's obviously Syrian now for his services to the English Crown, who told us the oil was running out.
Yeah.
It was really, and yeah, here today, just this week, Grant Shapps, Tory, whatever his title is, was saying we have to turn the tap on in the North Sea, bring more oil out, Denise. We need more money, so let's take some more of Scotland's resource, which, come the next election, will of course be pesky, overpriced, underpriced, running out, the wrong type of oil, whatever you like. It's amazing how people are so gullible to believe this, that it's some kind of burden.
It's quite hard to believe how people can be so gullible to read what they read in the media anyway, at the majority of the time, because, as you were saying earlier on with other guests, you have to shift right out through it to try and even find a grain of truth. And it doesn't matter where you go to look for your information, that there isn't much truth out there. It really is.
Unless it's Prism Show or barheadboy.com, he said, he can give himself a plug. What's the truth there?
There's truth here. And I definitely heard that earlier on, and you can speak openly in this show. That's what I liked about it as well. But the media bias around the world about every kind of issue at the moment, it really is what they call a postmodern time, although I don't want to agree with them that there's no truths in this world anymore, and they'll just I'm sorry, I'm going to start stuttering here because it flabbergasts me, because one day they can tell you the sun's shining and the next day they can tell you, oh, yesterday it was raining, and everybody would believe it.
Yeah,
correct.
It's quite hard to get people out of that, and if it's not on the mainstream media, people don't want to believe it.
But even our own supporters are the same. I mean,
you'd think after the 2014 referendum, where we were being fed all the rubbish under the sun, that people would really have wised up by now. But you
would think, but you just got to see the amount of people who are, for example, who are believing all the lies they're getting told about the Ukrainian war and the Russians, and they're believing everything they've been told. The same people who don't believe the BBC weather map are believing the BBC, who are telling them that, you know, Vladimir Putin's the latest Hitler, and you know, we're good, they're bad. One last question before we call it up, ladies, because the other one is, as I'm sure you'd agree, Heather, one of the greatest things to get us out of poverty would be more jobs, create more jobs. And a great way of doing that, and one of Scotland's greatest things, you know, we've got our whiskey and we've got our, but the other great thing is we were the best shipbuilders in the world. And today, during the Ukrainian war, with everything's going pear-shaped, Nicola Sturgeon has announced that the Caledonian McBrain ferries are going to get built in Turkey. Instead of being Scottish lads going into the yards down in the Lower Clyde, there's going to be Turks, and good luck to them. I mean, they're working class people everywhere. I'm in favour of all people, but these jobs should be in Scotland.
Yeah, of course they should.
And they couldn't even, and it doesn't help our cause, because if you can't even run a shipyard, how are you going to run the country? They will say to us. If you can't run an airport, how can you run a country? They will say to us. It's a disgrace that these ferries have gone to Turkey.
Yeah. I think so too. I mean, Dundee used to have. I mean, we've got the Discovery, which was built in Dundee. We've got a history of shipbuilding here, and you know, obviously Glasgow and other places in Scotland. I mean, I just don't understand some of these decisions that are being made by the Scottish government. I just think, you know, are they getting a backhander or
maybe it's because the ships are not. Maybe it's because the ships are known as she, and they don't know their pronouns. I don't know. When I was a lad, Denise, on the Clyde, just on the Clyde, not Dundee and not in Rosyth over there was 100,000 men employed in the shipyards, and it wasn't just that. They got trades. There were welders, and there were pipe fitters, and there were electricians, and there were plumbers, and well, now nothing.
But don't even that system doesn't even exist anymore. You know, where people, you know, are taken on as an apprentice and they learn a trade.
Correct. It's shocking. It's shocking. But we have to reverse it, Denise.
No, we definitely do. It's absolutely shocking that we've been reduced to having little to no industries at all. But by the time the Scottish government decide to call a referendum, will we have any left at all?
No, she's burning down the house before she leaves, I think.
Well, the other thing is, you know, here's just one just to leave as we finish. We've invented practically the modern world, you know, but we're too stupid to be independent. But one of the great things we did was we invented, there was a person in Scotland, a company in Scotland that developed the contact lens. Mm-hmm. And they were bought out by an American hedge fund company, and they bought over the place in Livingston, and they closed it down and moved all the production to America. Yeah. So Scotland doesn't get it. A few individuals who started the company and they deserve the day of profit, I accept that. But that could have been in Scotland. And it's not just contact lenses. There's so much.
It happens with lots of things.
So much. And that's why independence... Sorry?
I'm saying they take were enlightened beings as well. If you take it back to the Enlightenment period, they took all were philosophers and made them English before they could present themselves to being Scottish. It's all in the textbooks now as well, isn't it?
Springburn had all the steam engines, and now we're importing them from Germany and God knows where else. Anyway, we need independence, and the Alba Party is the party that's going to make that happen. Ladies, I want to thank you for giving me your valuable time, and I've got to wish you all the best and luck that you get. And anyone out there who's either in Ayrshire or Dundee or anywhere where there's an Alba candidate, and you've got a spare couple of hours, get to them, help them, deliver a leaflet, knock on the door, go to a street stall, talk to your neighbours, get down to the school, get some leaflets, hand them out, help them, and you'll get wonderful ladies like these represent you.
Thank you very much, Roddy.
You're welcome, and I shall see you ladies in person in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, at the conference, can't wait.
Yep. If you're looking for me, I'll be in the bar. I'll be in the bar.
in the hall, listening to all the speeches.
Yes, well, yep, I'll be there, and I'll look forward to seeing you all. And to you, our viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. And you know, make sure in May you go out there and vote, and you vote Alba first, ISP, and if you can find another independence party, vote for them too. But certainly vote for Alba Party first. That's your vote. Until I see you all
want independence, I think, you know, if you see
we've got to do.
Independence,
You've got to send out a message. Send out a message.
We've had enough carrots from the SNP. The only time they mention independence now is just before an election. You know, they'll mention it. They're mentioning it now, and then as soon as the election's over, that'll be it. Nothing until 2024 is the next round of elections. Then we'll be told independence, because it ain't happening next year.
No, not a chance. But folks, until I see you all again soon, please, you and yours, take care.
Yeah.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.